pre-qualifying here at Monza. It is the opening round of the Endurance Cup within the Blancpain GT Series. David Addison and John Watson with you. And Will Stevens is the man on screen who's stepped away from Formula One and from single-seaters for this year, and instead is very much now part of the WRT Audi effort for the Blancpain GT Series. Pre-qualifying is 90 minutes. We've had, whilst podiums for other races have been going on, the first handful of minutes of the session, and with 57 cars for this race, it's going to be another very busy session, John Watson.
Yes, it isn't. Car 28, Will Stevens behind the wheel. Bit of a tasty driver lineup in that car. You got Antonio Garcia. I thought he was an Aston Martin man.
He has been for a while.
Nico Müller, BMW.
Audi DTM.
Audi DTM. Well, that's part of the family. Will Stevens, Manor, and all things single-seater. But, you know, a good mix and a potentially strong car.
He was the quickest. He'd done a 1:49, although now fastest is from Pereira, who's on a 1:48.908. Now, Pereira is somebody that, in a sense, is a frustration. Not him personally, but we know he's very quick, we know he's very good, but he always seems to get paired with Pro-Ams, and therefore the overall results are always a bit compromised, inevitably.
Yeah, and it's a great shame when you've got a talent that potentially is a winning talent, given something to match what Pereira has. So it's just now gone into second place. That's substantially quicker now, almost, shock horror, half a second. And in fact, it's Will Stevens who's popped up from third to second. And it's the 66 car, which, if I look down, Black Pearl Racing.
Daniel Calvert's
another Ferrari.
Yeah. Funny, eh?
Surprise, surprise. Ferrari quick at Monza. Story there somewhere, isn't there? But it's the old one.
Is a 458.
Aspirated one, not the turbo, baby.
Yeah, 488. There it is.
Indeed, it is.
So Daniel Calvert's, we discussed in free practice this morning, he's a Corvette wizard and former ADAC GT Masters champion, the German Championship, but adapting to a new car, new team, new championship.
Peter Cox in car 4 is fourth. First time I've seen him in an Audi. I've seen him in an Audi.
Yeah, I think you're right. Audis are something that he's spent precious little time in over the years, and he's raced most things.
He's raced everything, I think, that's got four wheels on it. Most recently, of course, in the Reiter Lamborghinis, but into a strong car, strong team. Has been given a little bit of a ticking by the headmaster for abuse of track limits. Well, once you're allowed, but beyond that, then it might be, in and have a little word with me. So Peter Cox, who is one of those racing drivers, I don't know whether it's because he's Dutch or not, but they all seem to be very adaptable. They always seem to manage to jump into anything that's made available, and all of a sudden on the pace.
I'm just trying to remember whether Peter Cox drove an older privateer Audi in the Sepang 12 Hours last year. I've got a vague recollection that he did, but he's done very, very little behind the wheel of an Audi over his time.
And your mate Daniel Calvert's has gone even quicker, 1:48.270, which, if I look down at my times from this morning, is within 0.3 of a second of the best time set by the Ferrari, the 488, the 34 car, Malucelli. And so times are beginning to, and in fact, 66 continue that pace once again, fastest overall in Sector 1. And well, it's 33.9. Just looking down to see who's closer. The nearest being Pereira in the 74 Audi in second place, and he's 0.4 of a second. That's a massive gain in Sector 1. So let's see what the car 66 can do if it's not going to be compromised with this group of cars coming out of the second Lesmo. It's right behind the Mercedes. You may get a bit of a draft, but you're compromised into the Ascari chicane. Can he get past the Ferrari at the same time? No, he can't. So unfortunately, second sector times have been affected, but nevertheless indicative. Car 66 going to have to keep an eye on Kilovitz, who's got Alexander Matschul. But
he's the bagman. Right, so that's Calvert's being a hero and sorting out 34, which was the quickest car this morning. Who's at the wheel of 34, he says optimistically.
There we are. down in 31st place.
Yeah, Yuri Pisarik, who is the slower of the two. It's only got 2 drivers, that car. Matteo Marocelli is the real gun in it. So, Daniel Kvyat's ahead of Franck Pereira, ahead of Will Stevens, an intriguing top 3.
Just interesting that the time lost on that last lap for 66, the black Ferrari we're watching, was almost, well, 2.5 to 3 seconds, just to do a quick calculation. Time lost with getting past those 2 cars. And of course, if you're on a fresh-ish set of tyres, a lot of the cars that ran this morning hadn't run in Misano 2 weekends ago. They were on either very fresh or new tyres. Those that ran at Misano carried forward the best of the rest of their sets. So that's why, in a sense, what we saw from the first free practice session, I mean, teams, driver pairings that were, well, why are they down there? Well, that's half the reason. They were running on rubber that had done either a race or had been used in some of the sessions and wouldn't be as fresh as that. And bearing in mind that the tyre tends to give up its best. Oh, that's a bit sneaky, be careful, because a driver in the Lamborghini, I think another in practice, drove out of the pits and just drove straight across that demarcation line as if it wasn't there.
Yeah, well, that's a no-no, isn't it? An absolute no-no.
I don't think he saw it.
Didn't know it was there, Gov, honest.
He knew about it afterwards when he had a word with the beak.
Now, Vincent Abril in number 7 Bentley is up to 4th fastest now.
Exactly what I was saying. Fresher rubber, all of a sudden, car comes up to its natural speed.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, if you go down to where Bentley were this morning, I've got to turn over 3 pages to find them. Well, can you hear me out there, folks?
So that is Vincent Abril, hard at work.
Oh, well, that was a relief.
Oh, got the wax out of the ears.
Just saying, Vincent Abril, that car with Stephen Kane, they were 41st this morning, 1 minute 49.7. So Vincent Abril has done a 1:48.9, so he's picked up 7/8 tenths of a second.
Yeah.
But that was after a much longer 1.5 hour session, so early into this pre-qualifying session. So let's keep an eye on Vincent Abril, elevated out of the HTP team last year, who in fact have now moved on from Bentley back to the brand they're more synonymous with, Mercedes-Benz. So that is the M Sport Bentley, Vincent Abril, and I remember him being in, well, that's the Parker Bentley. I was just getting.
Chris Cooper at the wheel, 9th overall, that car.
Looks strange. You're so accustomed to the British racing green and the white, and then you see that sort of flash of orange, which is really the racing colours of Holland. I don't know why, but orange was, or is, the international racing colours of Holland.
I think they carried on that car because they're the colours of Derek Pearce's business. Derek Pearce is one of the guys that sort of funds the team, for the Porsche racer, and did the Dakar Rally this year.
Does he like orange?
Pass. But it's
personally, if I was going to do an orange, I'd do blood orange. Blood orange makes wonderful juice.
Well, so far, this is making a pretty good car in the Pro-Am Cup over the timing line. And still a 1:48.2 is the best lap that we've had out of this session. So Chris Cooper goes through and is now 10th because we've had an improvement from number 59, which is another of the Garage 59 McLarens. And 59 at the moment has Andrew Watson behind the wheel of it, the Northern Irish driver.
Yes.
He was pretty good.
There we are, Andrew Watson.
Pre-practice session this morning. There he is.
A young man, but with a great motor racing head on his shoulders. Did a good job this morning. Looked like he was very confident behind the wheel. He could have made a pass coming into the second chicane, thought the better of it, and then made his move on the exit of the chicane, and he got much superior drive off, and made an easy clean pass, which is using your head.
Going back to your tyre point, another car that's come alive, as it were, in this second part of the day is the other Garage 59 McLaren 58. Colm Ledegar has just gone 4th and has done the absolute best in the middle sector. So neither of those cars really shone this morning, but they're certainly where you expect them to be now.
Yes, you would expect McLaren. And also when you get the hairy man, Shane van Gisbergen, the New Zealander, who is a major star in V8 supercars in Australia, New Zealand, and let's not forget that other former territory, Tasmania. Ooh, just really, Frank Herrera, Frank Stippler, really running the exit of the curb coming to Lesmo 2, and you flirt with that with, you know, there's not much margin, it's either there or it's away. So Frank Stippler, usually a very secure, safe pair of hands, knows this place inside out.
And the time he's aiming to beat at the moment is that of his teammate, Frank Pereira, in the sister car.
By
the gap between them
second,
is a thousandth of a second. How's that?
Yeah, if that thousandth of a second, it feels like a minute. You know, it's where can I get about it? Then you probably never make it. Just drive the car, let the car on the track come to you. But Frank Stippler, you look how simple he makes it look. No load on the car on the exit of Parabolica, maximum exit speed, comes across the line, fastest third sector of all, 36.932. I mean, how difficult is being a racing driver? You know what makes it difficult? Being a racing driver and thinking too much.
Really?
Simple. I mean, it's like most things, I suppose you might say, philosophically. As my good mate Rex Hunt used to say, keep it simple, stupid. He caught a lot of fish, Rex Hunt did.
Well, Frank Stippler is at the moment the man with the absolute best last sector time to his name. The time that he did on his last lap didn't get him ahead of Frank Pereira, but Com Ledergar's McLaren is up to second fastest now, number 58. Frank Stippler, who is still a real hero in these cars. Remember that amazing job he did to win the Spa 24 Hours when Andrea Piccini never got back in the car after 9 a.m. in the morning, and Frank Stippler did the maximum time allowed and was just an absolute hero. He's been busy in historic racing again earlier on in this year. He was spectacular in the Ford Capri at Goodwood, for example. Max Buch in '84 is 7th in the Mercedes, and back in his natural habitat, really, of a Mercedes now.
Yes, although they had success, particularly at Vincent Aubryl by winning the Sprint Cup trophy, the championship, but I think that the whole HTP team and Mercedes, they've been together so long, and that little brief sojourn with Bentley did certainly provide great fruits for the team and for the drivers, but you sort of sense that Mercedes is their natural, you know, partner, and they've gone back. Great new product from Mercedes-Benz, the AMG GT3, and you know, expect to see these cars, not just the HTP cars, very much to the fore.
Yeah.
And not just simply in the sprint, but in this 3-hour race, Paul Ricard 6 hours, the monster itself, Spa 24, and of course the race really for Mercedes-Benz, that's probably the most important, which is not part of our championship, but is another 24-hour race somewhere in the forests of Germany. God only knows where that is.
At the end of May. Can we get excited about Laurens Vanthoor? Because we haven't really seen him today, but he's gone third fastest.
I mean, Laurens Vanthoor is whatever you put him in, but normally it's in an Audi, he just delivers. He's now got his younger brother Dries, who's 17, and Dries did a very strong drive in Misano, but Laurens is at that stage in his career where he's got all the raw abilities and speed, but he's got it all honed into that wonderful ability just to make it look so easy again. And such a strong, determined race driver, nothing is good enough unless it's total domination, total victory.
And of course he had his season last year derailed by his injury. There is the number 1 Vanthoor Audi. He came back to win the Sepang 12 Hours, but he was really miffed that he couldn't go and race at Macau, because that was one that he wanted to win, the FIA GT World Cup. Had to give the car over to René Rast. Not a bad substitute, but he was really annoyed he couldn't do that race.
I know, but I think that was a corporate decision made by WRT and Audi, because Laurens was still recovering from, you know, the injuries he sustained at Misano in October. And you know, the commitment that WRT and Audi make, they can't afford to take a chance and put a driver in who might not be at 100% race fitness.
Yeah, that's true.
And on Macau, I mean, it's a rough, tough roller coaster, literally, of a racetrack. Whereas going to Malaysia, it's sort of big, wide open spaces. Okay, it rained a lot, with a lot of red flag periods, with a lot of periods where there was nothing on the track at all, which probably made that job somewhat easier. So he got the easy option, but it wasn't his preferred option.
But now he is back and aiming to win races for Audi and aiming to win them with his brother. As you look at number 29 briefly, the Conrad Lamborghini, and number 11, the Kessel Racing Ferrari, hunting down a time as well. The Brognieschi, Andrea Vizzoli, Alessandro Bonaccini car. Number 100 Lamborghini is the attempted car of Max van Splinteren, Jeroen Mull and Louis Machiels, who used to race with Max's father Paul van Splinteren in days gone by in this championship.
I mean, I've just been sort of taking in all that's here at Monza. The first race was run before this pre-qualifying session got underway. The number of Lamborghini Huracans that have appeared since the end of last year, I mean, they're breeding like bloody rabbits.
Yes, it's astonishing.
There were 37 or more of them.
47.
47 in the Super Trofeo race.
And how many here?
There's a dozen at least.
Yeah.
What a great car.
Business is booming, isn't it?
What a great car. It's a supercar for both the private entrant and for the Grosser Racing and other teams that sort of almost, you might say, quasi-factory teams. And this used to be the domain really of Porsche.
Yeah.
And Porsche have got their own championships, which they tend to be more focused upon. And it's left a bit of an open door, and Lamborghini didn't need to kick it open. It was being welcomed.
With 0-2 on the Lumirank display, Comme le regard in the Garage 59 McLaren, second fastest, just a fifth of a second away from Daniel Kalvitz. It's still Ferrari fastest at Monza, but McLaren second.
Yeah, and McLaren is on its first flying lap. It has been in the pit, so they're just picking it up as it's on the track as we go back and look down from the exit of the Ascari chicane. And there is the McLaren bearing down on the Ferrari, but it's well enough behind it where the aero effect, a little bit uncertain under brakes. You can see the front of the car weaving around, and therefore the lack of ability to commit to turn in, so we had to just be a little bit patient. Let's see what his last sector time comes up as. A 37.7. That's a second down on Stifler's fastest final sector. Now, that little bobble we saw coming into the Parabolica would have made a small contribution.
Matt Griffin is currently fourth fastest, number 52 in the green Ferrari. Duncan Cameron's car, but as ever, where Duncan Cameron is, Griff ain't far away, and yet again he's going to be the gun driver in that car. And once more they elect to run just the two of them, so Matt does as much as he's able under the regulations. He could be on for the top time here because he's just done a personal and an absolute best.
Yes, indeed, and he's got a clear enough track ahead of him. The Bentley, looking up to the exit of Ascari, the Bentley's probably a good 100 yards or more ahead of the Ferrari, so Matt Griffin has got a very good opportunity here to certainly, he chose a rather sort of middle of the road point of making his turn into Parabolica, which I wonder why he could have stayed a bit further to the left and giving himself a slightly quicker way. So he comes through and he goes second quickest.
By 25,000, he misses out on the top time, so it's Ferrari 1-2.
If he had used the full racetrack, he might have been quicker. It's interesting watching because some drivers might stay way to the left and make a more acute entry into Parabolica. Matt chose to stay maybe more than a car width off the edge of the track and would have entered then slightly more softly, less energy and load into the front of the car particularly, but nevertheless good run from Matt Griffith.
So it was a very good lap with two personal bests and an absolute best. Now who else do we need to keep an eye to in all of this? Where is Bentley 8? Andy Soucek is now 11th in that car, which went so well at Misano. And looking to see if there's anybody a long way down out of position. 41st is Christopher Zirkling in the Conrad Lamborghini. I would have expected better out of that, especially as he's just been in a Lamborghini race.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see where Alex Buncombe, he is down in 44th. And the sister car, whereabouts is the sister car? 22. May not have been out. I can't see the 22 car.
34th.
34th, okay. Yes, indeed. So Nissan, yeah, again, feeling the effect of being slightly losing a bit of intake. Basically, they've been BOP'd. So, but it's done on the intake, so that takes away some of the top end of this, and they're actually running almost in tandem with just one car between them. There is Alex Buncombe. But he was comfortable and happy with what he did this morning. He said, we've got a car, okay, we're not maybe quite where we were last year, but we're not a million miles away when we put on some fresher rubber. And he went off to have lunch happy as a sandboy.
And Alex has done very well for Nissan, and Nissan have done very well out of Alex's efforts these last few years.
Just notice how much different Alex Buncombe was on the entry to Parabolica, in that he was stayed much more to the left, whereas Matt Griffin, who on his previous lap was well off the side of the track, now he's gone quickest, of course, which probably something got through, but he's done a 1:48.196, 74 hundredths of a second.
So Matt Griffin fastest, despite not being as good in the third sector as he was the previous lap, but it all added up together with the other two sectors to be the quickest. So Griffin by 74 thousandths from Karlvitz. Third fastest now is Shane van Gisbergen, taking over from Kobledegard. Maxi Book is fourth, Lawrence Vantour is fifth, and sixth fastest is 74, which is the ISR car that is now Philippe Guillauc. Seventh is Philippe Salaquada's sister car. Eighth fastest now is 28, which is the Garcia Muller Will Stevens Audi. Ninth is Vincent Abril, and 10th fastest is the Black Falcon Mercedes of Oliver Morley, Miguel Toril, and Mauro Engel.
So Ordóñez has taken over from Alex Buncombe and got a personal best, probably his first flying lap, so it would be his personal best. Comes out of Lesmo 2, there's the car, goes through that little feint that you get on the exit called Curva del Serralagio,
The king.
We never use, just call it, I always call it the kink of the curve, yeah. Out of the Ascari chicane. So personal best in the second sector, which is no doubt his first flying lap, and I would expect to see a green also in his, where are we, 28. 23.
So Lucas Ordóñez, who was the first winner, wasn't he, of the Nissan PlayStation GT Academy, heads up over the timing line. Good to have him back in Blancpain as he goes through. He's been plying his trade in sports prototypes these last few years. Over the timing line he has gone. The car is 22nd fastest now. Now Ordóñez, it says on the graphics on the screen, but the timing screen confirms Alex Buncombe, so we'll go with Alex. It's more of an Alex time, 1:49.777.
That time, just 1.5 seconds, 22nd on overall timings, 1.5 seconds behind the fastest time so far. As we go back, 58, Shane van Gisbergen. Let's look and see what van Gisbergen, he did a personal best in sector 2 in his last lap. There's the Bentley. Ooh, you don't want to be on the outside of a Bentley going through the old Curva Grande because it's a big old beast. But Shane van Gisbergen is accustomed to door-to-door racing in Australia in Super V8s. So makes the pass cleanly, gets into the chicane out of it without any difficulty, and continues on his way. So van Gisbergen, nothing particularly special in that first sector. So don't expect a great deal on this lap from the McLaren driver. Just has to make his way through the traffic as effectively as he can.
So Kobledegard was behind the wheel. It is the car now for Shane van Gisbergen. And I said to him yesterday, how's the jet lag? He said, I only got in yesterday. He said, I'll be wide awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, but nothing seems to faze him. Red Bull sponsored driver, and has had another very impressive start to his V8 Supercars Championship campaign. And that is the Boots and Gignon BMW.
And I think that's up at this. Is that that's the second chicane, I think.
It's Karim Auger at the wheel,
Karim Auger. I just wonder what he's doing there. And that car is buried. It ain't going anywhere without outside assistance. So that's going to need one of the trackside vehicles to come along and attach a tow to it and get it to safety.
Now, at the start of the session, the race director, Alain Adam, ran a full course yellow test. He could do the same again here rather than have to stop the session, couldn't he?
Yeah, this whole thing of full course yellow, it certainly was problematic back at Brands Hatch last weekend. Didn't work, nobody understood it or bothered with it. We ran one in Misano, and I think the drivers and teams did understand it much better. And it in a sense, is a very like what you might call a virtual safety car, except it's called a full course yellow. But it implies that everybody has to impose a certain amount of discipline and not make up, as that was the case.
We've got full course yellow. What you refer to is absolutely right, but here you've got, dare one say, a different standard of teams. And in British GT last weekend, it wasn't very well policed. They found some bugs. People didn't adhere to it, as you rightly say. But at this level, everybody can have that delta time assessed, and penalties can come. And the quality and the level of teams operating in this is at a higher level. An international championship as against a domestic one, it stands to reason. So in this, it works very well. And Karim Moget's out of the car. We've gone full course yellow. And it just saves so much time, doesn't it? You don't have to lose track time by pitting. You can keep the session going. Everyone's driving safely.
The big advantage of a full course yellow is that you don't have to put a safety car out, which may not pick up the lead car, and then you have to wait for everybody to filter past, and it just goes on and on. It's a messy way of doing it. It was the way that was used for many decades, but you're trying to implement this full course yellow and getting everybody to adhere to what is required, and not ever see three cars all bunched or two behind the Bentley. They're not really meant to be bunched behind the Bentley. They're meant to have, that's what I call it, a delta time. Yeah. You can see there the Lamborghini 19, and behind it, I can't quite see what it is. So I would say that that's not what I would call as you should be under a full course yellow.
Yes, I mean, under a virtual safety car period, the gap should not come down. You should all be doing the same time, and therefore, if you're the leader, you don't lose your advantage as you would under a safety car. At number 19, which is the Andrea Piccini Lamborghini, had just done its best in the first sector, so the lap has been scuppered because of this car. Karim Moget, who's an experienced driver, Karim, in fairness, but he had that big accident at Spa last year, didn't he? Which,
did he? Yeah.
The wind out of his sails.
Well, what's this? Oh, pulling out now, maybe. The Bentley's not going quick enough, but we're under a full course yellow, guys.
Exactly. Yeah, Andrea Piccini, I think, has got the scuppers.
Okay, we've
now
now
we
green.
green.
Bang. Now maybe Piccini was getting the message a little bit quicker than the Bentley that we were about to go back to green, but nevertheless, that's the intention of the full course yellow, is to try and keep the status quo between the cars at a constant distance, and he goes back straight into the pit lane. Well, I wonder, is that just irony or not?
Temper's bubbling over a bit there, I think, for Piccini. Right. So he has pitted. The sister car comes back out.
He's back out again. Look how quick. He must have been going absolutely nuts down the pit lane. Spot the difference. Different car. Same colour.
Yeah, it's the sister car, isn't it? Yeah, phew. Could be worried there. Yeah, Piccini is in, and the 63 is the one that's come back out again. I mean, you will find, joking apart, that some teams will run a lap with a drive-through in it just to see how much time they lose over the course of the session, but Piccini's heading for the garage.
We do have an interesting scenario here regarding pit stops, and there's a maximum and a minimum time. Oh, Lawrence Van Thor, or whomever. Is that Dries Van Thor? It's Lawrence.
Yeah.
Oh, Laurent. Well, Laurent, what was that all about? Mega, as you are, making a little schoolboy error. Anyway, in the pit stops, the minimum amount of time is 95 seconds, and if you do, there's a gap between 95 seconds, which is the minimum amount of time for a normal in the pit lane, stop, refuel, tyres, driver change, and exit the pit lane. If you do it in less than 95 seconds, you will be penalised. Conversely, there's a 75-second pit stop window as well, which is there fundamentally for those people towards the end of the race who need to do a splash and dash, because it might be marginal on fuel and everybody will try to avoid a splash and dash, but if they need to do it, they need to do it within 75 seconds, and if they go above 75 seconds they will also receive a penalty. And this is going to be interesting because each circuit will have a slightly different. Some circuits will be 90 and 70. Here in Monza, because of the length of the circuit, but primarily because of the length of the entrance where the pit line speed limiter is to the exit of the pit lane, it's deemed to be a minimum 95 second stop, or for splash and dash, a maximum 75 second stop go. So, just watching as Audi comes down, and it's still that Ferrari, Matt Griffin. 1:48.196. Matt Griffin, all the way from somewhere close to Dublin in the Republic of Ireland, has gone quickest. And he slipped that one in, but you did tipped outside.
We know he's a star, Matt Griffin, don't we? And he proves it every time. And he's such a nice character as well. I don't think anybody would begrudge him his.
Oh no. I think
Ferrari.
it's wonderful that a car like this, Matt Griffin, Duncan Cameron, which is, it's Duncan Cameron is a gentleman, but he's not a gentleman driver. He's actually a very capable driver who's probably more like silver, or maybe burnished gold or tarnished gold, but maybe a bit silver underneath.
Yeah.
He's in that sort of middle between gold and silver, and of course Matt, who is a gold driver.
And again, Duncan believes that as he's paying for it, he'll get the maximum track time, so they go just the two drivers. And that's certainly a potential Pro-Am winning car.
Yeah, there's some, I suspect, I mean, of course, you've got to make sure that your ace driver doesn't overdo the length of time in the car, which does give, again, Duncan Cameron probably the lion's share of driving. But what it does do, it means that your two drivers are sort of familiar with the racetrack, whereas when you run three drivers, you've always got to wait for that third stint when you put in your third driver to get up to speed. Whereas if you put Duncan Cameron out, Cameron will start, Matt Griffin will do the midnight stage, Duncan gets back in. He will have had experience of the car, track conditions, whatever. Yeah. Whereas if you're a three-car driver, all you've got is what you did in the morning, and you may not have even driven in the morning in the qualifying session. Number one on the windscreen, 01, indicating that he is quickest overall, not that he is minus quickest overall.
And of course quickest in Pro-Am. So Pro-Am 1, 2, 3. The fastest of those in the Pro Cup is the 58 McLaren, 4th overall.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have to put too much into the thinking of what's going on. It's James van Ginzbergen, and he's a big old fellow, you know, when you see him. I mean, he's not sort of one of these slim-like little jockeys. He's a big old boy, and he gets himself into that McLaren. But he really loves just, the finesse of a GT car. Let's say the Super V8s that he races, which are pretty good in terms of where they are relative to the rest of the field. But more ponderous, more weight, higher up, and different style of racing. I mean, they do long races there also.
Yeah.
Tyres are a big part of that package. So Van Ginzbergen lining up the Ferrari as we come up into the Ascari.
And it was only, 3-4 years ago that he announced he was going to retire from racing. He didn't want to do it anymore. Severed his links with the Stone Brothers team, and then a month later said, actually, I've changed my mind, I want to come back racing, and found himself at a different team and has never looked back.
Stefano Rosina, who raced in Misano, and he's retired more times than I think I've done. And I mean, I said, why are you retiring? Oh, I had business. I'm going to be serious. He comes back, I didn't recognise him, he's shed about 3 stone, and then he's a racing driver again. I mean, I can't say the same for Shane van Ginzbergen, but, I suppose going fishing or hunting or whatever he might do, then it doesn't really match up being a racing driver.
Michele Rugolo at the back of this battle shot in the yellow Ferrari, trying to find some clear track space. He had been looking pretty racy, actually, Michele Rugolo, with a personal best in the first sector, but he's now backed out of the lap, and this is going to be a quick car in the Pro class, because there's Michele Rugolo, there's Alessandro Pierguidi, who, if you think back to Spa, 24-hour event, he's quick and spectacular.
Yes, spun on the first corner on the first lap. Yeah.
2 years ago, and they all missed him. We still don't know how. And Passin Lathoris is the other driver, the Thai driver, and this is a Pro Cup car, and Passin Lathoris has a good track record in things like GT Asia. He had a year in British GT, he's done ICTO, International GT Open. So that's another car to watch. At the other end of the scale in the AM Cup, Castle Racing's ubiquitous Ferrari of Steve Earle, Bernard Delhaize and David Parrell. And Bernard Delhaize it is at the wheel of the car at the moment. So there are Ferraris all over the place. And potential winners again, because we need some cars out of the Pro Cup. Now, one that we ought to have a look for is 333, the Rinaldi racing car, the Norbert Siedler, Marco Seefried and Rinat Salikov car that was second in the race last year and won Pro-Am. Well, this year, with Marco Seefried back in the driving force, the car is in Pro Cup. Was that a marker board?
Well, there was bits of a marker board. I don't know how it got onto the racetrack, but certainly I think it was the Audi kicked up whatever the remnants of that marker board were, and that's what we saw go flying in the air. The Ferrari, just look at that. Well, it was an assisted pass, nevertheless.
Yeah.
The row racing BMW would not normally be overtaken as comfortably as that. But the 488 Ferrari just suddenly is blended in to GT3 racing almost seamlessly. I mean, I know it seems simple to put a turbocharger on an engine that's already an outstanding engine. There's a lot more to it, and the work that's been carried out, I don't know if it's AF Corsa or being done individually by the teams, but they've certainly done a good job in moving forward with turbocharged power over the normally aspirated 458 engine. Oh, he's got into the pits. So he pulled off pretty abruptly there, coming out of parabolic.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah. But that's you've got to do that to find out how quickly what's the time for the lap past the pits, hard lap into the pit stop, because that's where you can make up time. You make up 2 or 3 seconds doing that.
And the equivalent could come in the race. You come out of the parabolica, you could get a call. Pit now. You've got to do it. You've got to react.
You've got to be prepared to react.
Can't waste another lap because the calls come for a strategic reason. 85 is another of the HTP Mercedes. This is Clement Schmidt, Indy Danger, and Luciano Bacchetta, who we used to see racing in the UK in T-cars and Formula Palmer Audi, but has been away racing Formula Renault and then prototypes in recent seasons. Indy Danger, who came from the German F3 Cup into GT racing last year, and Clement Schmidt from Porsches into GT. He was part of HTP's Bentley squad last season. More curb rattling going on coming out of the Variante della Roggia there as the 85 Mercedes heads for a time. It's Clement Schmidt behind the wheel of the car, in fact. There was always a fairly handy Porsche peddler going back a few years.
In that car, I was talking to the team yesterday, and Indy Danger, I would have thought would have been the quickest of the drivers, and they think, no, Luciano Bacchetta is the man. That's the guy they think is really a mega.
Yeah, I would have thought so, that. Yeah.
And he's 31, and his racing has been sort of a bit spasmodic. And I think last year he went back and took part in the karting world championships. I mean, at 31, I mean, you could be a dad to most of the competitors. Maybe in some cases, a grandfather. He's just one of those people that's slipped under the radar and never really had the opportunities to show his potential.
No, going back to when he drove in Formula Palmer Audi, he was able to beat Jolyon Palmer, and Jolyon's now Grand Prix driver. He's here this weekend with Renault.
In those days, Jolyon wasn't the driver he is today.
Indeed so. But he was still a very competitive driver, Luciano.
I think that was the impression I came away with, that he is actually one of those guys that is under the radar big time, but to those that are known, and particularly within the team, they think he is really, really a potential star of the team.
And to put him in this is a good career move, because he can prove against lots of other people with big reputations just how good he is. 34 Ferrari at the back of the shot was the car that was quickest this morning, when most of the driving seemed to be done by Matteo Marocelli. In this session, a lot of it has been done by the other driver, Jiri Pisaric, and it's only the 2 drivers in that car. Marocelli has now got back behind the wheel of a 488 and has moved it up to 9th fastest.
So it comes across start-finish line, and the personal best the first 2 times in orange on important, so I suspect that was his first out lap flying, or certainly first flying lap. And we'll keep an eye on just to see how the 34 Ferrari, pretty much really dominated, currently 9th, dominated proceedings. 147.9, where the best at the minute is still Matt Griffin in a light Ferrari, 488, and a 148.1. Theoretical best lap, if you take all the purple sectors and combine them to the driver with no name, would be a 147.557. And to go along with the driver with no name, we've got an unidentified car that he was driving. Ooh, that wasn't in the script.
That's Marocelli overstepping the mark a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what you want to do to your rear tyre. And didn't expect to see that, because the back end of the car just like he lit it up, and just probably running tires. I'd have done a fair amount of running, just didn't have the grip. Let's have a look again as we see into Lesmo 1. Enters in pretty normally, and at this point he runs a slightly bit wide, and he puts down a few lines as he gets up there, but managed to keep it all in place.
People on Twitter just asking about the full course yellow that we were discussing a little while ago, and why use that rather than a safety car. Well, part of the reason for a full course yellow is it's easier to start and it's easier to finish, because you don't have to send the safety car out. And again, you see Manocelli sideways.
Yeah, his tyres have gone. He's coming into the pits.
The safety car has to try and find the race leader. If you just deploy a full course yellow situation, it can be done there and then. You don't have to worry about where the leader is. Everybody has to slow down straight away. It's also easier to finish, because you don't have to worry about lights out and completing a lap. You give the teams a countdown over the radio, and the green flags come out, and you go back to racing there and then. So
the only difficulty is that some drivers have taken a little comfort break or a little sleep or something, and they're not switched on, and you've got to be in that situation for full course yellow, fully alert, because at any point on the racetrack that you don't have to be crossing the start finish line, you could be just going into the first chicane, and then suddenly track's green, you've got to be on it.
But the same is true on a safety car restart, and often you find some drivers have nodded off because they're not, and they compromise everybody else behind that can't overtake.
Yeah, but I think in the safety car restart, because everybody's sort of lined up behind you get a sense the cars ahead of you, you can see them going, whereas this, you could be on your own, so you've just got to be. I think it's a better solution than a safety car.
Yeah,
I don't like to see the whole performance of a safety car being introduced. There will be circumstances where it will be necessary. I mean, I just think, again, for circuits like Spa for the 24, where they run 2 safety cars, for long tracks, that's been the norm. I wonder, will they run a full course yellow at Spa and not get rid of the safety car? They'll always need them, but use them much less than we've seen in previous times.
Yeah, last year we did have safety cars, didn't we? We had 1 or 2 full course yellow situations that then sort of grew into a safety car period. And again, just going back to the question on Twitter, that sometimes a full course yellow will be used, but if it's going to be a long situation that's harder to manage, then you put them behind the safety car, because that way you don't have to worry about monitoring delta times. The race director's job, to answer another question, is that once he's got them all slowed down, he can then look at the incident that's caused it, and as soon as that's clear, then he is responsible for giving the countdown to the green flag conditions being introduced again. But with the information provided to the race director from his assistants, through also the timing service and the sector analysis, they can easily identify who hasn't stuck to that requisite speed under a full course yellow and can be penalised accordingly. So hopefully that gets to the answer of what the race director does and why a full course yellow. Right, number 11 Ferrari is pushing on, and we've got this car at the moment 4th overall, with Andrea Rizzoli having done the time, 1:48.453. It's another of the cars from Pro-Am, so the top 4 now, all from the Pro-Am category.
You know, if this is what qualifying, this is the form qualifying is going to follow, there's going to be a lot of head scratching. 240 kilometers per hour coming across start-finish line. And then you get into this heavy braking, and Monza is made up of long straights and very tight corners, particularly those 3 chicanes where you've got heavy braking. So the brakes get a hammering in the first half to 2/3 of the lap. Braking into Parabolica is hard but very brief. It's just more to check your speed, get it down 60 kilometers or more an hour, or 60 miles an hour maybe, rather than 60 kilometers an hour. And the brakes get a bit of a chance to get cooled off then on the run back down into the first chicane. But it is hard on brakes. And again, the acceleration up into Lesmo 1. Let's watch and see if this Ferrari is behaving itself. Yeah, rear tyre wear was, I think, the real issue we were watching a few minutes ago.
19 Lamborghini pushing on as well. Luca Stolz at the wheel.
So, who's behind the wheel? 16. It is
Mirko Bortolotti.
Mirko.
So that's going to be quick, isn't it?
Yes.
10 fastest now.
Yeah.
He's done a personal best lap last time. He's done a personal best first sector, as you see the IMSA Porsche going through. Raymond Narak's team joining Blancpain GT this year.
Mirko Bortolotti, genuinely nice guy. Wasn't he another sort of graduate of the Palmer Audi Formula 2 or
Formula 2?
Formula 2.
Bortolotti, yeah. In the interest of balance here, Jade Edwards, who used to race Ginetta Juniors against Luciano Becchetta, would like to point out that he's only 25.
Who?
As Luciano Becchetta, not
Right.
31.
Okay.
And as he's the same age as her, we're in danger of offending a lady here.
Well,
so he's 25 in real money.
Tell the team, because they told me.
Right, there you go. So clearly he's had a hard paper round. He looks 31.
Jade Edwards, is that anything to do with Sean?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because I think that Sean's mum is here this weekend.
Oh, right, okay.
Definitely.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
No, different. I glimpsed her in the pits.
Different Edwardses.
Yeah.
Jade's father, Jim, was a multiple one-mate Renault champion. Grandfather, Jim Sr., used to race Formula 3, and then Renault's Jade races GT cars, sister races.
Nothing to do with Jimmy Edwards.
Now you show you everybody's age. Right, we talked earlier, moving on, Jade, about 333 Ferrari, and this is it. This is the car that won Pro-Am here last year, and we thought we'd got a ripper story when it was going to have been the first Pro-Am car to ever win outright a Blancpain race after the exclusion of the Lamborghini, but the Lamborghini was put back in. But it's a very quick car, and it could be a winner this weekend.
It is a 458, and the difference is just behind the doors, the 488 has got those air intakes, whereas the 458 doesn't require them. So looking to see where 333 is up to 17th. Marcus Siegfried and a 148.971. That's that car's, best lap. So 3/4 of a second behind still the Cameron Matt Griffin Ferrari. And 3/4 of a second covers the top 17.
And how many cars have we had? 56. So 42 Ferrari that Mark saw cream against the barriers on his first flying lap at 5 minutes past Sparrow Watson this morning, has not ventured back out again. So I think there's more damage done to that than we first thought.
Well, it hit the front of the car, and you may well have damaged part of the substructure that would carry the suspension units and substantial bodywork, radiators. It just sometimes you think it's not a big shunt, but it depends how the load was.
Yeah, sure.
How it went through the car, so it could have done more damage to the impact parts of the chassis and those. Looking up the inside, a little bit of uncertainty. Am I going to get through? Yes, I am. So Norbert Siedler in the 333. Marcus Siegfried, Norbert Siedler. Such a good pairing, these two. Well matched. Similar size also, which actually makes it quite a lot easier when they come to do their driver changes, pit stops. Not having to use seat inserts to assist or whatever.
In your travels through the paddock and up the pit lane, were drivers moaning about traffic, or are they just sort of accepting that and getting on with life?
If you could have found them,
Really,
they may
like
or
that?
may not have, depending on the circumstance. I don't know whether we're hiding half of them.
Well, such is the hospitality structure that most teams
there's
have.
massive hospitality. I mean, I was not shocked, but I was impressed by the level and quality of hospitality behind the pits, and also the number of guests that are being entertained by the teams these days.
It's very busy, this place, this weekend. Mirko Bortolotti's up to 5th fastest here. He's fastest, is he not, in the Pro Cup, and is 0.280 of a second away from the top time. And Bortolotti, on his last lap, went quicker still, a 148.476. He's in a big hurry, and look, another personal best in the middle sector.
He's certainly pushing. This is a lap he wants to max out on. He's got cars ahead of him, but they're sufficiently ahead that they're not likely to come into play or interfere with his entry into Parabolica. He doesn't want any aero coming off the nose. And I see how he's again staying way, almost a full car width. Then he makes the 8 cut back to the left, then makes his turn over to the right. So he'll get a good, clean, unaffected exit out of Parabolica. And let's see if he gets a personal best and whether that can make any difference to his current 6th place. It does.
Up to 3rd. Excellent job.
He'll be happy with that.
And interestingly, a big improvement, a big jump up the order, but he was slower than he had been previously in 2 of the 3 sectors. But the middle one was really good, and it all strung together nicely. And there he goes, up to 3rd fastest, heading the Pro Cup still.
So can he maintain the momentum? He's still got traffic ahead of him, and he's going to get into that now. He's got a Ferrari ahead of coming into, and that is a 488. So that's going to come into play when he gets into the braking area, into the second chicane. So he'll want the Ferrari to stay one place. He's going to go down the inside. He gets the... Yes, and he was able to make a little bit of a cut back to get somewhat of a better entry into the Second chicane, good, clean exit, but all that will have shaved a tenth or two off the potential of what Bortolotti can do. He was slightly compromised by having to take the tighter inside line in to the second chicane, and consequently his speed off would be affected. But into Lesmo 2 now, and again, good entry, good exit, runs the curb but doesn't abuse the curb. But again, traffic ahead. The Bentley sandwich between, is a Mercedes, one of the new AMG GT3s. So Bortolotti in that second, he's coming up to the second. Let's see what, no, nothing particularly special. So maybe he might want to back off a little bit rather than get too close to the tail of these 3 cars ahead of him, which will then further interfere with any further lappery he might wish to do.
An awful lot of drivers being done this morning for speeding in the pit lane, and the stewards have been kept busy, and quite a few fines have been taken.
Are they being penalised? They're being fined?
Yeah, euros rather than grid drops.
Bortolotti, wise guy, into the pits. He's done a strong run, gets up to 3rd place. Traffic ahead, nothing to be gained. Go in. Do you want to make another change to the car, Mirko? Maybe a little bit of adjustment here or there. Check the tyre situation. You don't want to use tyres unnecessarily. You want to keep all the new tyres you have for qualifying and for the 3-hour race on Sunday. But he will have a good feel for what that car is capable of doing. Still 1 minute 48.1 is the fastest lap by Matt Griffin. Now Duncan Cameron in the wheel. Still, well, 147.972, just over a tenth of a second. Slower than we saw this afternoon, or saw this morning, from the 34 Ferrari, Malucelli. And nobody really doing an awful lot. There are some people, giving personal bests, but they've probably just jumped into the car. Let's look and see. Oh, well, is that twitchy or is that twitchy? Touch of rallycross. I know. I like. He dragged half the infield, and his intakes are now. Yeah. He's got to go straight into the pits. He won't know it's that badly grassed up, but there's a load of grass in the front of that car. Slowing down, you just see coming down. I don't know why he's doing that, because he's not going to really get rid of all the grass. Somebody might have been watching that in the pit lane and would say, you've got a load of grass. Teams are watching all the footage, and somebody will be monitoring that in the event of something happening to one of their cars.
Steph Dusseldorp, the driver, incidentally, who was having the moment. So 25 minutes and counting to the end of the session.
Team manager of car 888, Kessel Racing, to race director immediately.
That's the Am Cup car, isn't it? The Zanotini Talbot Etienne car.
What's it done then? It's only down in 46th position, for goodness sake.
Something to do with the pit lane, I suspect. So we'll wait and see what that story holds. Right, Duncan Cameron has taken over his Ferrari now. 66, which has now got Stephen Parrow at the wheel, or the pseudonymed Stephen Parrow.
He's not called John Smith, is he?
I will have to research overnight his real name. I do know it, I've forgotten it. It's in the anorak pocket somewhere. But the pseudonymed Stephen Parrow is now behind the wheel, and it's not Johnny Depp either.
Oh, you'd know it was Johnny Depp because he had his 2 Yorkies with him.
So 23.5 minutes of the session to go. We have news about Steph Dusseldorp being off the road and back on again. That's being confirmed to the teams by the race director on the timing screen. Right, so this car now is going to run at a different pace, isn't it, with all due deference to Parov. It's just not as quick a car in his hands as it is in the hands of the pro drivers, but he's relatively inexperienced. He's done the VLN, he's done Blancpain, but he's not been racing for years and years and years.
Looking for a late little dive down the inside and thinking the better of it, not sufficiently close to the Ferrari on the entry into Parker, but nevertheless show the nose, just get the driver distracted. Now coming down main straight, 4 car lengths, 3 car lengths between the two, a bit too far behind to try a bit of a lunge down the inside. Duncan Cameron just going back to the fastest car overall, Matt Griffin, Duncan Cameron Ferrari. Matt Griffin's fastest lap still stands, has been standing now for quite some time, and he did a 48.1, and the last lap of Duncan Cameron, which could have been a lap in traffic, we can't really tell. Well, his last one has just come up now, that's lap 23, a 151.9, his last was a 151.8. He's lapping consistently in that high 1 minute 51, but obviously the pace of Matt Griffin is significant. Maybe the tyre that Cameron is on is towards the end of its useful life.
Yeah, they want to keep a fresh rubber for qualifying if they can, don't they? And of course that car only has to go into 2/3 of qualifying, because 2 drivers means they sit out the first part. Bentley 7 hard at work. Vincent Abril seems to have been in that car all session.
He's been in for a while, and it's his first outing in the M Sport Bentley as opposed to the HTP Bentley. So while the two cars ostensibly were very similar, there will be small engineering detail differences, and also just how the team runs. There'll probably be a slightly more British, Cumbrian,
yes. Based in Cockermouth, Malcolm Wilson's M Sport team. This part of M Sport really run by Matthew, Malcolm's son, who himself is talking about returning to the British Rally Championship soon, but he's made a very good fist of running these cars in GT racing. And for a team that, has done nothing else in racing other than this, it's purely a rallying background. Tremendous job has been done to take the cars to 2 victories in the first year. Giancarlo Fisichella's Ferrari on screen, or was a moment ago, flashed through the shot. And there's the BMW 99, that's the Philip Eng car, which at the moment has got Alexander Sims behind the wheel, and it's 7th quickest.
Yeah, Alexander Sims, if you want a quintessential English gent in every description, you always think of Alexander Sims, not Alex or Al, but Alexander. And well, again, that's not the first Ferrari 488, and that, apart from anything being tyre related, I think is also an indication of the difference in torque that the 488 generates compared to the aspirated 458. Just to go back to the Bentley, I thought the most impressive bit of engineering on the Bentley team, and I emphasize team, in Misano was actually Malcolm Wilson with his new titanium ankle.
Yes.
He's finally managed to find a surgeon and replacement ankle for an injury that had been giving him a great deal of discomfort and pain for many, many years. And he reckons fantastic.
Oh, there you go. And Malcolm is, when world rallies don't clash, always present. And they went to Sepang, for example, at the end of last year with very high hopes, and it just did not gel at all. He was hugely disappointed, as was the whole team. But
should have been a circuit that suited them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Open flowing corners.
Nobody could really understand just why the cars weren't performing, so they've got a point to prove now.
Yes, and the thing with Sepang is, I suppose, maybe the surface can have a bearing on how some cars perform. And of course it was, I think, 2/3 of the race was wet, if not more, and 4 hours there was no running at all.
That's right. We did a bit of filling.
Don't tell me about it. I was trying to...
You were trying to sleep?
Sleep, yeah.
Right.
Didn't have much difficulty, but anyway.
Thanks for your support. I'll always
Well, I was there watching it, and nevertheless.
You were there in spirit. Fabio Babini, you're looking at in the DHL back Lamborghini, going post haste, and he's 21st fastest. The best lap the car has done is a 49.0, and this is his first flying lap since a pit stop, and he's rejoined slap bang in traffic.
Yes, a bit unfortunate for that. He may be able to deal with it, but the Audi ahead is not going to be an easy pass. So a 34.908 is just sort of an opener, just a sighter almost. So Babini, another one of these talented Italian GT drivers. I'm going to say Italian Lamborghini, but Italian GT drivers who is in a Lamborghini.
Yes, he works for Pirelli as a development driver. He works for Lamborghini as a development driver, so married all together. He was at Brands Hatch last week in British GT, although I don't think he had a very happy experience there, but he should go well round here. He knows Monza like the back of his hand. And an off.
And the Ferrari is off at the exit.
Is that Miro Konopka's car? It's the Miro Konopka ARC Bratislava car. Miro Konopka, Andrei Lewandowski and Theodor Mishkovsky. that's gone off.
Yes, and it's caught the curb on the exit of Ascari, snapped, and he's able to get the car running, so he's got a left rear damage. He may not be able to make it back to the pits, but he's got the car running, so if it feels like he's crabbing, which it looks like it's doing, it's he wants to get, if he can, from left to right very, very quickly indeed. And with, 17.5 minutes or less remaining, he may well be advised to just pack it in and don't cause any further issues. Let's have a look and see. The long shot, watch for the air it is, but he lost it coming out. Tank snapper tops and tails it. So that'll be left front, left rear.
And it was Theodor Miszkowski who did the spin.
Don't do that. Wait. You're going to wait. You're going to make a move. Just do make sure there's nobody coming up behind you. And the trouble is, the speed he's travelling at and the closing speed of those cars that are coming out of Ascari, you know, within the blink of an eye, they'll be on you. Here we go.
Oh dear. Sort of tottering back to the racing line.
There is a white flag being sort of somewhat limp-wristedly being waved midway down the straight. Not quite sure whether to really enforce it, but at least he's staying consistent on the outside of the corner.
But then he's got to cut across to get into the pit lane, hasn't he? He's got to go from one side straight across to the other.
He does.
Here we go.
Oh, dear me. As the right rear has got damaged, and I suspect the right front's also got a smack when it hit the barrier.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he's got it
the
back.
car's back, and the right rear tyre is just about to finally detach from the rim as a consequence. It no doubt was knocked. The tyre would have been cut when it hit the barrier. So what's going on here, rather?
That's a Will Stevens out,
yeah,
isn't
just
it?
looking at the car behind, just looking for track position.
Yeah, it's dropped a long way down now, actually, number 28. It has got behind the wheel Nico Müller, and it's 18th. And Nico Müller is not slow.
There's a little look at this. Side by side, Will Stevens just cannot stop the Lamborghini coming through.
Nico Müller versus Fabio Babini, down to the chicane.
Later on the brakes.
Yeah, Müller sorts it out. Right, 15 more minutes remain.
And really, on timing and scoring, it's all yellow.
Yeah, very few improvements are coming, aren't they?
There's nothing, because everybody's done what they want to do. Used up the sets of tyres they've had in an earlier phase of this 1.5 hour session. So we've got 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 or so cars in the pit lane out of fields of 56, 57, 56 at the minute. So it's a busy racetrack, and nobody's doing anything other than just pounding around. Obviously some drivers will have needed just seat time, so they will get that experience, and of course what they're doing may not be dissimilar to how it will be coming up towards the end of their respective stints. So it's all information and very helpful. We just had a little notice that the Porsche 76 might have had a spin. Can't understand that at the second chicane. We might need to have video evidence just to make sure that isn't a nasty rumour. So Audi and Lamborghini coming out. Ferrari making sure it doesn't stray across that white line, which it stays well to the right of, which is required to do. 13.5 minutes remaining. So Nico Müller and the WRT Audi with the green flash as the way to hopefully identify it. You don't often get a glimpse of the numbers unless the car, you can see the door, so that's the indication of that particular Audi. Bit tight. Yeah, the Porsche got a bit mullered there coming into the first chicane.
That's the Carimoge BMW out of the gravel and back into the session. That's gone through.
Well, they did well to get the car out and get it back to the pits and get it cleaned out and back out onto the track.
Number 10 Lamborghini through the Ombra racing car. That's Matteo Beretta, Giovanni Berton and Stefano Constantini. I've been prompted to do the calculation. 11 different brands you have in this weekend. Audi, Bentley, Lamborghini, Jaguar, Nissan, Ferrari, Mercedes, BMW, Aston Martin, McLaren and Porsche. That's your 11. How about that for an entry?
I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
I think it really is. I mean, it's a quality field at every level, both in terms of the drivers. You know, I'm going to pick a driver obviously above a car, but you're seeing stunning GT cars, all more or less. I mean, if you go down to 40th, it just happened to my eye catch as 91 in 40th. Zach Speed Mercedes, 1.6 seconds off current 40th, 1.6 seconds. I mean, you couldn't write a script.
It's going to be a tremendous race, isn't it?
Shane van Gisbergen again. He's a feisty guy. I mean, you see him, he's like a woodsman. He's big, hairy, you know. If you're in a pub fight, you'd want him on your side, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's the ideal person for V8 supercars. But I think he enjoys racing over here. Those 2 wins last year, and he's back for more.
Yep. Well, he gets a bit of a break between the Super V8s in Australia, and I mean, it's a real stretch because the flight time. I mean, okay, if you're travelling up front, it's a lot easier. In the middle, it's bearable. Down the back, it's a nightmare. So I would assume that Shane van Gisbergen's probably up front, and you get a good rest. And ironically, actually, he will not get into European time as such. He'll be here for such a short time, he won't have adapted to European time. So it isn't quite that difficult. It sounds, as long as he can get to bed, get some really good sound sleep. And of course he's doing something pretty physical, you know, for the 3 days or 4 days that he's here. Nevertheless, he's got to go all the way back again for another round somewhere in Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania, Darwin, up at the crocodiles, the salties. I tell you what, the salties run when they see him.
Yes, that's right. Because they're going to lose. And his stamina is fit because the temperatures in which he races, certainly in Darwin, for example, Townsville, race up there, unbelievably hot,
There's not just the temperature, the humidity.
Yeah, so doing this for an hour and a bit stint is nothing. Right, 10 minutes of the session remain, and improvements few and far between, although we had one a moment ago from number 50, Alessandro Pierguidi, up to 9th fastest. There he is. We've not had that many warnings about track limits, that we've just had one, and it was for the Karim Berger, Oliver Grutz, Julian Darras BMW. It was Karim Berger earlier on, and is now Olivier Grutz.
Just looking at the Nissan ahead of the Ferrari, still showing Alex Buncombe, well, fastest, personal best in the first sector, so it might be Alex back in, but currently 25th. And this is a car that has led this race in previous years. So can Alex make further improvements? 37.8 in the second sector is not really going to get the job done. And of course a lot of traffic around him. He's going to have to be patient because there's not a lot he can do into Parabolica. Well, the Ferrari overruns the corner. Maybe was intimidated by the Nissan, and Alex gets through. So we'll come across the line. He wants to find an improvement on a 49.2. He's disappointed he's not going to see it this time. 49.7. Traffic fundamentally was the reason.
And a look at the Aston Martin of Oman Racing Team there as the Nissan comes booming up the inside and 3 wide. That was never going to work.
No.
And it doesn't.
No, you're quite right.
So that was Alex Buncombe trying to get through the traffic, outbraked himself. The Ferrari went with him, and Alex goes up the escape rope, which is what it's there for. The IMSA Porsche nips through on the right line. Matteo Maroncelli, by the way, quickest in free practice, is now up to 4th quickest in this session. There he is. And he is 0.185 of a second off the top time.
I'm noticing, especially in the Lesmo corners, there is Alex Buncombe tries. I mean, that was never going to be on. It was just, well, also the Ferrari sort of attempted to go up. I mean, I don't think the Ferrari knew the Nissan was there. And whether that caused just distraction for the Nissan or not, but certainly a slightly unusual manoeuvre from the Ferrari. I'm just wondering, and this is just hypothesizing, that when you get to the end of a stint, we've seen a number of the Ferrari, the 488s coming through Lesmo 1 in particular, and on power, primarily with torque, punching the back end out. So I just wonder, is that something we're going to see more of? You know, coming up towards the end of a stint when the tyre's done more than its best, and a driver's having to hang on. It'll be something to keep an eye out on, as we see the current fastest car back out, and that's still Duncan Cameron, 151.120, and I think that might be Cameron's quickest lap so far.
Stewards have been busy again in this session, one of whom, one of the offences, Adam Christodoulou in the Mercedes. He has been given a fine and a behaviour point for speeding in the pit lane. Adam Christodoulou in number 57, Mercedes 16 fastest. He's the wheel of it at the moment.
Young man in a hurry, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in Europe after spending some single-seater racing years in America. So into the last 7 minutes of the session now. Duncan Cameron's car, thanks to a Matt Griffin time, is the fastest, all building up nicely for a fascinating qualifying tomorrow morning. Yeah,
I mean, everybody will be on the freshest of their rubber. In some cases, they may want to run at least one new set. And if some people really want to throw the dice, run 2 new sets. So let's have a look and see the sector time. Second sector time for Duncan Cameron, 34.8 for the first sector. His last lap was 151.1, which in fact I think isn't his personal best in this session. 38.3, again nothing in particular in terms of out and out pace, so this is more really just about race, getting the car to work over the period of an hour when you're on a set of tires, and making the car as comfortable and easy to drive as you can. Ooh, a bit late in there on the brakes. Squeaked it through. So Cameron comes out of Parabolica. And can he improve on a 51.1? And this will be his 32nd lap. 51.3, so it was 0.2 slower.
So despite a busy track, we've had the odd off, but it's not been too bruising a day, thank heavens, and hopefully Sport Garage can repair the Mark Suhr Ferrari for tomorrow. Something to research overnight.
Something struck me looking at Duncan Cameron then. All the Ferraris are all left hookers.
Yes.
Could you have a right hooker if you're a UK resident driver or whatever? Or is it just how the car is laid out that you've got to have, this is how it is, chap, if you want it, we'll sell it to you. If you don't want it, go and...
I'm assuming they all come like that as a left-hand drive.
I'm assuming that
Ferrari,
a lot of drivers, certainly on what I would describe as clockwise circuits, which Monza and the majority of circuits we will visit are clockwise. Some people believe that if you sit on the left-hand side, it gives you a better view, because what happens is if you're on the right-hand side, the A pillar comes into your line of sight and slightly blocks out the point that you want to make, your so-called clipping point. Bit of thought there. Anyway, there's the...
yes, it was an answer that exactly that was the answer from a touring car driver last week as to why this new Subaru is a left-hand drive car.
Don't spoil what sounds like a really good bit of deep thinking in my part.
I'm just backing up your point, proving you're right as ever. But in Duncan Cameron's case, I wouldn't have thought he had much choice. That's how they're built.
No, I think the assumption was based on like everything that's coming out of a single manufacturer, Audi, Porsche, Mercedes. They will all be built as left-hand drive. And everything inside the car is structured. It's not like you go to buy your Ferrari from Maranello concessionaires and you can specify whatever you would like.
And equally, they've driven left-hand drive Ferraris for so long, and if you've got paddle shift, it doesn't really matter where you sat, because you're not looking for a gear stick, are you? You're just doing it with your hands.
No, the paddle shift obviously has made all that a lot more straightforward. Mind you,
yes,
Porsche has gone back with the 911R, its latest incarnation.
Yeah, I was reading about that, yeah.
To a
proper
shift stick.
Yeah. And it's going to become something of a collector's car, because it's, how is it described, for people that like to drive, not people that like to be seen to be driving?
I wouldn't condemn that. I wouldn't condone that at all. No, it's just that I think that certain markets, if you're buying what they would describe as a sporty car, they quite like the manual involvement. It's not as quick as paddle shift is, but nevertheless, it gives you that sense of engagement, which I think some owners of performance cars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and I just wonder whether other manufacturers might follow the example of Porsche and run a limited production of a 488, a Huracan, a Mercedes or whatever, wherein you could opt for a manual option.
Interesting thought.
Oh, a tail again, you see. No, that's a 458, it's not a 488.
And who was that getting it all sideways? That's Alexander Matschul, isn't it?
Yeah, I think rear tyre wear, I think it's going to be a factor. If the track remains green to, you know, what it is now, it was green when we started this morning with the rain, but it's getting very well rubbered in right now. But the back end of the 488s looked like they were getting a bit wayward, and even the 458, which doesn't have the torque to punch the tail in the same way. So Duncan Cameron continues on his way. Quickest car on the track, personal last lap. Picked up 2.5–3 of a second, so down to a 1:51.0. And outside of that, there's not an awful lot else of note. Everybody just going through their motions.
Ending the day with an unmarked car, ready for tomorrow. And qualifying tomorrow is what, 9 a.m? So let's see what the weather gods have in store overnight. It could be that it's on a damp track like this morning.
Well, that's always fun.
Indeed.
For us.
And everything you've learnt today goes out of the window.
Yep. And, you know, that one little error, if it just simply can cost you massively. And at Monza with 56, 57 cars, we get the car that was damaged early in the session repaired. You know, it's 3-3-3. Well, up at Ascari, I wouldn't expect to see that car.
So Renat Salikov at the wheel of it.
Maybe that's the reason why.
Who is the less experienced of the three, but last year proved to be no slouch.
It's you can barely move, and of course the steering lock is very, very restricted, much more so than on the true production version, because you've got much wider wheels and tyres, and so you've probably got about half the turning circle that the road car would have. But he gets it back safely, no damage, no pack drill, everything was clean on the back of the car.
And he'll come round to take the checkered flag.
I mean, he lost it in the first part. Sort of looked like he turned in on the brakes, you know, off the throttle, lock on, and around she went, and the checkered flag.
So pre-qualifying is at an end, and that is a session that doesn't affect the grid, but it's important to get all three drivers through that session, because if you were to have a problem in the qualifying tomorrow morning and one of your drivers hadn't been on track, then you can at least say through this session, yes, they have been out in qualifying. Which is why it is deemed a pre-qualifying session, not free practice 2, for example. It's the word qualifying that's the important part of it. So that's the plan for the teams now. They take the data. There'll be lots of long debriefs into the night, and they will reconvene at the crack of, ready for qualifying tomorrow in 3 parts, the usual format. I can see in the pit lane, as the flag has got out, as an example, WRT getting ready, because as each car comes in, they're going to take the opportunity to do a practice pit stop and then put it in the garage. So the top teams don't waste any opportunity here.
No, so, and doing it when the car comes in, I mean, as it will do, at the end of any of the 3 stints, or the 2 stints where there's going to be a driver change, that's when the car is at its most critical, and that's when the pit stop's got to be absolutely seamless.
Exactly so. That's the view down the pit lane. So some of them taking the flag on the track, others taking the flag in the pit lane. Pit lane's already pretty busy. That's half of the fleet of AF Corsa Ferraris, more to come. They've been busy this year with the different liveries, which is good. The green one is that of Ezequiel Perez Compact, Raffaele Giammaria and Alessandro Balzan. Duncan Cameron's car behind.
Look at the carbon dust. Or was that something on the camera?
I was thinking it was dust, but
it looks like a lot. I mean, that is, wow. Or certainly pad dust. So, while the track empties out, the pit lane gets very busy indeed, and it is a real car park down there at the Of course, a garage. And hopefully they will work out some kind of strategy within the period of those pit stops, wherein they can get them all serviced and not trip over each other.
Even the in-lap's busy.
Yeah,
people still pounding on.
Well, and if in the old days the in-lap was a chance to catch your breath, tickle the old chronometric rev counter, get it back down to I didn't over-rev the engine, no, not me. And but in modern motor racing, you would be expected to push. The only thing you need to be aware of is that if you come in really, really, as they say in the trade, hot, and come to an abrupt, sudden stop, there's nobody there with air guns to cool your calipers, pads, whatever. You can do a bit of a mess on the brakes. So certainly you come down to parabolica, full chat, and then back off and cruise into the pit. Also, it gives tyre engineers a bit of good data that they would like to have.
So everybody heads down the pit lane, and 56 cars went out on track, and this is the order at the end of the session. AF Corsa blocking out at 1-2 thanks to Matt Griffin, and then Giancarlo Fisichella. Third fastest Daniel Kalvitz ahead of Matteo Mauricelli. Fifth fastest was Mirko Bortolotti, and sixth was Maro Engel in the Mercedes ahead of Alessandro Bonaccini. Then the Philip Eng BMW ahead of Shane van Gisbergen, then Alessandro Pierguidi, John Lee Adam in the Aston Martin, and Maxi Buch for 12th for HTP in the Mercedes. A nice variety of teams, nice variety across the classes as well, from Pro Cup and Pro Am. 13th was the Vantor brothers and Frederic Verviche ahead of the two ISR Audis, 14th and 15th. Mercedes 16th ahead of the next of the WRT cars, the Will Stevens, Antonio Garcia, Nico Müller entry. Then we are back to Mercedes for Luciano Bacchetta, Indy Joncha and Clement Schmidt ahead of Bentley, number 7. Outpacing number 8, that was 23rd, Andy Suchek, Wolfgang Reip and Maxime Soule. Barwell's Lamborghini 24th, and that takes you about a halfway through. 25th was the number 23 reigning Pro Cup champion Nissan Alex Bunkerman, one of the three drivers, along with Lucas Ordoniev and Mizunori Takaboshi. Further down, Attempto's Lamborghini 28th, AF Corsa's next Ferrari to be found 30th, the BMW Team Italia car 32nd, with that's Cobalt, Stefano Colombo and Giorgio Roda. The Jaguar 33rd, and Peter Cox Audi a long way down at 35th, but Adrian Delina playing himself in this morning. Christopher Zerkling and Jules Gunn on 36th, ahead of the next of the Nissans, the 22 car for 37th place. That's the car that Sean Walkinshaw has been drafted into this year. Steve Earle's Ferrari at Kestel, heading the Am Cup, ahead of the Bentley of Chris Cooper, Chris Harris and Derek Pierce. And then third in that class, the Gary Kondakov, Alexander Moiseev, Riccardo Ragazzi Ferrari, again from AF Corsa stable, 44th fastest. And still they come, because for 49th, the ACA ASP Mercedes, with former British GT champion Daniele Perfetti joining Michael Lyons. A long way down with a punctured tyre, Steph Dusseldorf, Klaus Graf and Lucas Lohr. And the Boutsen-Gignon BMW we'd seen in the gravel, and with damage after bouncing off the barrier, the ARC Bratislava Lamborghini to round out 56 cars on track. The 57th, Mark Sword Sport Garage Ferrari, damaged this morning, not out in that session, hopefully will be made good for qualifying tomorrow. So that is how we look at the end of pre-qualifying. It's been another interesting session. These are a look at some of the highlights as the cars went pouring out onto the track to begin the 90-minute period. And in one or two cases on cold tyres, people pushing hard too soon and exit stage left. It was very much another session, though, all about Ferrari. We know how well Italian cars go around Monza, but not going so well. Karim Ogier, who put the Boutsen-Gignon BMW in the gravel, that brought out a full course yellow. So instead of interrupting the session, people drove at a controlled speed. The green flags came back out, but then we had this off for Steph Dusseldorf, who went across the grass, picked up an awful lot in the front intake and headed for the pit lane. And then we had this drama as well for the number 69 Lamborghini, as off went Teodor Nishkovsky. He did some damage to the suspension of the car and ended up pitting after a slow in-lap after that drama. So Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin top pre-qualifying. Qualifying is at 9 AM tomorrow morning. From John Watson and David Addison. Bye for now.